trying to find a clip to open with of Bernie talking about the oligarchs, but there's so many of them. Whatever. We know where he stands.
I've read Marx. I've read Engels. I've read Das Kapital.
The world is run by Trotskyists.
Hardcore Trotskyists.
How great an anti-American Marxist.
They're controlled by Trotskyists, as you put it, and these are the most evil, sick human beings on the face of the planet.
As soon as, the Democrats lose, Bernie is back on in front of the camera talking about the oligarchs taking over the U.S. government. It's the same old story. It sounded different and fresh 8 years ago, but it just seems like a stale old playbook at this point. And so I guess the question tonight is, where do we go from here? And you're listening to the Left Opposition Podcast with Aaron and Chris. And I guess welcome back to the show, Jeff, and welcome first timer Devin. How you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
On the program tonight, we're talking about Beyond Bernie. Where do we go from here? Do we line up behind Bernie if he makes the call for a workers' party, or do we take matters in our own hands, or do we just doom scroll our phones for the next 4 years?
The third one.
What's the yeah? So what do we do? And then later tonight, we're going to be talking about the situation in Ukraine from an economic and military perspective. Did you guys? Maybe we'll talk about it a little later. Did you guys see Trump today just berating Zelensky?
No, I saw photos. The
audio is
not great. Not great with the body language. What was the substance? What did I miss out?
It's like
we won't be getting to that, but
it's like when you're at a friend's hangout and two friends like legit start arguing, and it's like really uncomfortable. Anyway, that's what that was the energy in the room. Okay, so
all right.
So earlier this week, the Independent Socialist Group released an article, Getting Past Sanders and Towards a Workers' Party by Jeff Booth. Jeff, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Great to have you. So yeah, I guess the question I posed at the beginning of the show here is, where do we go from here?
I think where we go is it's something that's happening from different angles, not just the left, the real left that doesn't support the Democratic Party, but also, especially after the election, there was a real mood of hostility towards the Democratic Party from progressives and even some liberals that just felt like, hey, this is going nowhere. It's kind of a betrayal that Trump won for the second time. So we think there is kind of a moment right now, it might be ending soon, or in the process of ending, but there's a moment right now where we find there's much more interest and questioning of the two-party
recording in
duopoly.
progress.
The lesser evilism arguments don't work at this moment with a lot of people. They're not gone by any stretch of the imagination, but prior to the election, you had everything from the Green Party lefts, Jill Stein and others, running again, and they were under tremendous pressure. They were under tremendous assault from the Democratic Party, lawsuits, infiltrators, you name it. Cornel West throws in and starts campaigning in a limited way. Yeah. And then
forgot about him.
And then post-election, right the day after the election, a union I used to be on the executive board of the Boston local, the United Electrical Workers, they published a statement and then followed up quickly with another statement, basically saying we need a labor party. And they were part of the 1990s effort for a labor party that I was also a part of in Massachusetts. I was a chapter secretary of the state of Massachusetts and on the executive committee in the Boston chapter of the Labor Party. This is in the mid-90s. And the UE has resurfaced again, calling for a labor party after, supporting the Democrats off and on for, in recent years. And then you also had Osborne run, which you've probably talked about on the show before. Osborne out in Nebraska running as an independent. His campaign was exciting until right towards the very end where he attacked immigrants. And then he set up an NGO sort of where he's been supporting, we have reports he's been supporting Republicans and Democrats, both the individual candidates, but that should be fact checked. And then you had, of course, post-election, a lot of discussion, like I mentioned, about the need for independent politics. Actually, it's kind of interesting. We're hearing phrases that we've used as a small socialist group kind of being used in larger forums, about independent politics of the working class, independent politics, independent left politics, and that's all good. That's all very good. Most recently, just about a week ago, on well, when was it? March, let's see. Oh, sorry, February 20th. There was a webinar called Lessons from the U.S. Labor Party for Lessons from the U.S. Labor Party for the Working Class. And these were 4 ex-Labor Party leaders, Mark Dudzik, Jenny Brown from Labor Notes, an academic from New Jersey. I always mispronounce his name, Botanik or something like that. And then Carl Rosen, who is current president of the UE. And I can talk about that if you'd like to hear more about that. But the fact that it happened at all, with 1,000 people registered, who knows how many showed up because it was a webinar. They wanted no interaction. And there wasn't any. So it's just, there's a lot of different sort of shoots opening up, little roots here and there that are coming to the surface for a workers' party or a labor party, and that's extremely exciting to us. And our angle on that is, as ISG, a small revolutionary socialist group, this is something we've been obviously pushing for a long time, but we have gotten to the point where we're interested in running a candidate ourselves we have 3 different cities we're looking at in New England to possibly run a candidate. And we discovered that Rhode Island DSA, the entire chapter, has decisively broken with the Democratic Party. This is extremely exciting for us, and we're involved with that with members of ISG in Providence, Rhode Island. So if you look at that copy of the paper you were talking about, either, of course, online on our website, or if you manage to get a paper copy, we still do that. Right on the facing page, the article I wrote called "Getting Past Sanders and Towards a Workers' Party," we have an interview with a leader of the Rhode Island DSA. Very good interview, very good stuff for us being in the working class, but also for revolutionary socialists, where they have decisively broken with the Democratic Party. And the very last answer to one of the interview questions, if I can read a quick quote, we plan to use this electoral campaign, so they're going to run in Providence. They've already started some canvassing. We're involved with that. We plan to use this electoral campaign to bring our political program to the public, win more people to socialist politics, start to building a movement to break from the 2-party system. We're trying to run a campaign that's really capable of winning, but the main purpose is to organize people. In the medium term, we want to run more independent candidates, both in Rhode Island and in collaboration with socialists and other states, hopefully building a nationwide movement. Our ultimate goal is an independent socialist party. That sums up in a paragraph what we're trying to do as well. We put this forward in various formats, public meetings, meetings that we talk at that sometimes people don't want us to talk at or whatever, and in our material. So this is an interesting moment, and that's what we're pushing for, bringing together the sort of the beginning of a workers' party. At this point, unfortunately, that's going to be through independent left candidates here and there. But when they say part of our, and Osborne, for example, didn't say this, but when independent lefts or independent union progressives running as hopefully independent lefts for in electoral politics, if they specifically say we're doing this to help build a larger thing, a larger workers' party, then we're really, really supportive of that. Of course, program matters, but we're not extremely critical about that if they're headed in the right direction. And that's some of what we're working on now. And it's a good time for that.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. That's interesting. Also, just a side note, just please send me the contact information of the DSA people who are running, the leaders, because
I'd really like to talk to them.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk to them too.
Yeah, that'd be great. I didn't even think of that. You should have them on your show. Yay.
Yeah, I know. Hey, look at that. Look, see, networking.
Here's the name. I'll throw out the name of the person that was interviewed.
Yeah.
Also, we actually did talk to more than one person, but one person put their name on it. And this is a leader, co-chair of our Rhode Island's DSA's electoral committee, Kinverly Dicup. Probably pronouncing that. Last name is Dicupa. Kinverly. I'm not currently doing work in Rhode Island, just getting reports on that from ISG members there, but they're very excited about it. And this is if you read the article, the interview, it's called "The Dead End Pulse of the Democratic Party." It's not an overnight thing. They've been working up to this. They faced a lot of opposition from parts of DSA. They're reaching out to other DSA chapters that are in line with this. For now, it's very exciting. But if you want me to get into the webinar, I can tell you about New York DSA. It's not the same picture at all. And New York DSA gave them a lot of crap for breaking with the Democrats. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's exciting stuff. I know we should definitely all have it. That's okay. Great. Question I have though here. So some people will say, and I think we know some people that are like, well, why do you want to build a workers' party? Why aren't we building an explicit socialist party? Why are we not building the mass communist movement? Like, why why isn't this kind of a concession or everything? And obviously I have my answers about it, but because that happens. Well, why don't you do that? So what would you say to people who say, well, why a workers' party? Why not a socialist party?
Well, should I start with the D word? I hate to do this to everyone, but
Go
dialectical
for it.
materialism. Dialectical process, lots of contradictions here. And if we thought a small revolutionary small revolutionary socialist party or organization could, at this moment or soon in an intermediate time period, become a mass force, we would say, let's go for it, let's do it. But the reality of developing that, if you look at any other countries, the Bolsheviks, in Russia, just recent formations, that maybe have come and gone already within a couple decades. They don't just, they're more organic than that, basically. They come from different trends, different political trends on the left. It's a messy process. You need resources, you need boots on the ground, so to speak, and you're going to have to argue and debate over program. And that can all be very good, actually. That's the way to figure out, through I hate this word, praxis, to figure out what to do. Yeah, I know. See, the whole thing with the U.S. left, somebody summed it up. I forget what I was reading. Hey, it was a question. Someone said, hey, has the U.S. left jumped from academia into the working class yet? And I'm like, no, it has not. But it needs to, like yesterday. And that's part of what electoral politics is for the left. If you run as a revolutionary socialist and cast a broad net with anyone that's ready to engage with independent left, or I would say independent left or progressive politics, then you can build that revolutionary socialist organization or party. So for us, we have shorthand for that. We call it the dual task. And that is build the seeds, at least right now, or the little shoots, again, to use the plant metaphor, to build independent politics. It can be individual campaigns, it can be, but hopefully all the different streams adding up to a river of forming a workers' party.
Yep.
But at the same time, we're organized for revolutionary socialism. We're recruiting, high school kids and workers and you name it into a revolutionary socialist organization. But that is too slow a process with the resources we have. And I don't see anyone on the left having the resources. DSA might claim to be, but we can get into that. If you're recruiting to DSA, you could be recruiting to the Democratic Party. I'm not trying to trash them. Like, I love parts of DSA, individuals in DSA, love them politically, but then it's an amorphous organization that actually does not like democratic centralism or democratic unity. And if you read that interview with the DSA members, they actually talk about more cohesion is necessary in DSA. I took that to mean democratic centralism, and that's true. They're absolutely right. They do need more cohesion and so on. So groups that have the cohesion, that have a good program, that have they're grounding themselves in Marxist theory and organizing, that's beautiful. But part of that is tactics, and running independent left candidates is a way to build the Revolutionary Socialist Party. They're interlinked, especially in the context of the United States. If we were in another country, we could be talking about, should we work in Die Linke or not? And, should we, work in the CGT in France, communists in the Union? The answer is probably yes, definitely work with them. But then in France, for example, should we work with France Insoumise, France Unbound and Mélenchon and all that? And for us, the answer is yes, because you will meet lots of workers there, and you will try to win them through revolutionary Marxism, revolutionary socialism. So what's the U.S. context for that? And I'll end on this point: is no workers' party, no mass socialist movement. What do? You got to go out and organize workers, and that's unions, that's electoral campaigns from the left, staying clear of the two corporate parties. And as we talked about informally before the show, you don't platform Democrats at union rallies. You don't sow illusions of the Democratic Party, et cetera. But there's a lot of space there. There's a lot of room there to do real organizing. And it's not a huge discussion with some activists at this point. Like I was saying, post-election, they're ready for this more than they were prior to the end of the election. I literally had a person that was in ISG, a bus driver, who left ISG not for political reasons, just having some personal mental health stuff going on. But they were all in for Harris, and I'm like arguing with them wildly on Facebook in a public forum. And they're like, what are you on, or something like that. They're like insulting me, and I'm like, well, I'm on this, But it's
called Marxism.
Election, her whole attitude changed, and she just was like, I'm never doing this again. And that's not that unusual. for a layer of activists right now.
Yeah, we had that too. When I was in the IMT for a bit, and there was young activist. She was good. She was great, but she was very much into liberal identity politics and everything, and she just couldn't get over it. Like, she was good on everything else. She was recruiting on her campus, I think at Boston University, very good doing study groups, and she just couldn't let this go. Yes, institutional racism exists and everything, but some of the politics about, it's just, and then she just left over it, and it was too bad, because we're like, look, these are alien class ideas. Like, yes, there is a double oppression in capitalist society. Yes, workers are oppressed, but like, you can be a white worker and you can be white and oppressed because you're a working class white. That's the whole thing. Yes, like there's a whole thing, and that just was driving a wedge, and then she was out, which was too bad. But that does happen with some of the people. It's always around election time. Usually that's when you notice it, because I get that, like, we don't want Trump. I don't want Genocide Joe either, but it's just, we kept giving up concessions to it. And I think, to get to your article, watch me talk, like how I taught me to your article. This is the quote you used, and I liked it. Senator Bernie Sanders, independent Vermont, on Sunday. This is from an interview in September 8th, 2024. Senator Sanders on Sunday called Vice President Kamala Harris's decision to moderate her reviews on fracking and Medicare for All pragmatic, saying that Harris is doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election, and that he still considers her to be progressive. I mean, fracking and Medicare for All will put and we'll even throw up the genocide in Gaza as well, that she also supported. I mean, what are you still standing for at this point? Like, this is, I still think they're blaming I think they realize they can't blame the left on this one anymore, because it was such, every state she lost in. But I mean, that was a great quote, because I'm just tired of hearing these people defend the Democrats no matter what, because when you keep defending it, like, yeah, it sucks that the Democrats lost for, if you were looking at a few things here, but like Medicare for All, fracking, Gaza, genocide, war, arming Ukrainian Nazis, like, that's still going on, and that didn't change at all. And it's, I don't know, but yeah, no, I just want to say that was a really good point in your article that you brought up too. But
Sanders, as I think you all know, he was a dead ender for Biden along with AOC. They defended Biden when George Clooney was saying,
literally, Nancy Pelosi turned on him. Joe Biden turned.
So what does that tell you if the left decide to go to the very bitter end for Biden, who, if we had a show about that, Biden's crimes are legion. I mean, he just did such horrible things. He was a racist. You all know that stuff, but he was horrible, and he, forced the government very quickly onto the railroad workers, made them accept a contract they didn't want, made them shredded their vote, and made it clear if they went on strike, he would smash them, calling up the ghost of Eugene Debs, who would have gone ahead anyway, who did go ahead anyway with the American Railroad Workers Union and went on strike. And also, I mean, it's just, there's another quote in the article. I don't know if you're going to get to this, but Sanders came out after the election, long after, I think it was November, I wrote it down actually, November 23rd. And I got this email too, because I'm on all these Sanders lists just to figure out what's going on, right? And it was basically like, hey, what about independent politics, And he said something about, what was it? Should we be supporting independent candidates who are prepared to take on both parties? That was one line of a much longer email. It was all about reforming the Democratic Party. But some people, like, that guy, the Status Quo news podcast or something?
Yeah.
You ever hear that guy?
Yeah.
Anyway, he had a whole show about that. Is Sanders calling for an independent party?
Kyle Kalansky, the Social Democrats, was talking about. Yeah, I think
they were talking
about it.
But basically, that he was not alone in that. There was all this speculation. Sanders, in this, in his ripe old age, is really going for it now. And within 3 days, I think it was, he has John Nichols from The Nation do the, definite, you knew this was coming, mandatory, walking back the independent campaign stuff. And Sanders even left, there was one little quote where he said, basically it was, Nichols, you're not talking about creating a third party or creating a new political party grouping, are you? Sanders, not right now, no. And the interview continued, and Sanders did say something about, he's comfortable with challenges that take on both parties, but it's very abstract. Since then, he hasn't said a word about that. He's touring now out in Nebraska, as you probably know, and other Midwestern states, which for me begs the question, why didn't you start in like LA, New York, Chicago? I mean, why do you have to go out to the, white hinterlands basically and do your shtick, what are you afraid of in Harlem? What are you afraid of in Bed-Stuy or South Side of Chicago? You know what I mean? So anyway, he's doing his thing now, but it's all about reforming the Democratic Party again. So that moment lasted like a second. But I saw people get excited about it. I felt bad. I'm not saying this from a position of like, oh, you're ignorant so-and-so. I'm saying like, I understand how you could get excited about that, but it was never real. And he's done that for 40 years. In the article I mentioned, it was a very short article. I didn't have many characters or many words to play with, but basically since 1984, Sanders has supported the Democratic Party presidential candidates. 1984, he supported Mondale, supported Jackson, he supported every single one, Clinton, you name it. And I don't expect people to be like experts on Sanders. I've tried to do a lot of research on him. I met him in 1990 at a Campaign for Labor Party, we called it, conference before the Labor Party effort. And he was kind of disappointing because I up to that point, I thought of him as an independent. I didn't know about some of the stuff that had happened. And then I found out, and when the Labor Party got off the ground with, 8, 2 national unions, 8 larger union bodies from other unions supporting the Labor Party in the mid-1990s, Sanders was completely absent. He was gone.
Amazing.
He didn't support it. He'd made a dirty deal with the DNC around 1991. Actually a little earlier, but it got kind of sealed at the Kennedy School at Harvard around 1991, 92. And it was quite simple. Hey, DNC, I like you. You like me. Don't run anybody against me in Vermont, and I'll support whoever you want me to outside of Vermont, including the presidential candidates. And I'll go on committees because I want to do that. As I'll caucus with you. And all that happened. All that was worked like clockwork. But that meant forgetting about the Labor Party effort, trashing Ralph Nader when he ran in 2000, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what it's about. So, I started to list some of the things happening right now for independent politics. There's more to talk about. Chris Smalls put out a statement for Labor Party. You've got Shama Sawant, who left Socialist Alternative, is doing Worker Strike Back, really excoriating, really going after the Democratic Party and Sanders, by the way, which is ironic because, Shama isn't 100% forthcoming with the fact that there was a long period where she and the SA leadership did support Democrats in Seattle, did support Sanders, and did support other Democrats around the country.
That's did ads with him,
That's one reason I left that organization, by the way. And so Workers Strike Back, but I got to give them some credit right now. They're going after it. I have some criticism, but they're going after Sanders. They're not, the Sanders nostalgia is not happening for them. It's still happening for other people. I'll talk to some people I really respect, on the left, and you get to Sanders and their eyes glaze over and their heart starts to palpitate, and they're just that was a beautiful moment. And no, it wasn't. It wasn't a beautiful moment.
No.
I was there. I was at Sanders rallies. It was not a beautiful moment. It was liberals, tacking left for 2 seconds and not really left. We could get into that, but Sanders was never, he wasn't even doing social democracy. He was just doing, left populism with the Democratic Party, which has a long history. McGovern, Jackson, you name it. I'm not going chronological order there, but you know what I mean? And basically, that's, some people are over that. That's why it put the title in there, and it was approved, thank goodness, Getting Past Sanders. That's a real thing on the left in the U.S.
It's our biggest hurdle right now.
Are you past? If I could be really brutally honest with people, I'd say,
do it.
Okay, before we start talking about Marxism, are you past Sanders? Are you done with that shit? And, well, if they say yes, we'll have a great discussion. If they say no, we'll still have a discussion. But I'm going to try to bring that up somehow, because what happens next time? I spent decades in Socialist Alternative working very, very hard. And the great thing was getting Shama elected. One of the best things we did was getting Shama elected on the 15 Now, winning 15 Now in Seattle, all that. That was a really good campaign, not without flaw, but really, really good. And then it was pissed away at a crucial moment because Sanders arrived on the scene. Now, there were some things happening before that I could get into that led up to that. It was basically losing your mind over Sanders as a Marxist. Wow, I thought we were preparing for that for 2 decades. Fighting for the Labor Party, fighting, at rallies, oh, we're going to platform the Democrats. You have to go, stay on the sidelines. fighting the union bureaucracy, reforming our union, and having Democrats trash us, Democratic Party politicians. We fought that battle for I was one of the founding members of Social Alternative.
Yes, you were.
It was called
Yep.
Labor
Militant.
Labor Militant.
Yeah, I know.
And so and I was ready for that moment. So were other people. Not just, I mean, we had over 100 people leave the organization over the turn to Sanders and the Democrats in general. It wasn't just Sanders. And the leadership, most of the leadership, because I was on the national committee, but most of the leadership just was not ready for that moment, and it was a severe problem, a severe disappointment. We left, a lot of us left SA, we left CWI, Committee for Workers International. That was a key moment, and that's something, in retrospect, oh yeah, that happens. Big events shake up the left. In a way, that's a good thing, but it also can piss away 2 decades, 3 decades of work, So Sanders nostalgia is over. There's people out there that I started to mention. There's also this, it's a left group. It's the organizers. It's all about labor and community for an independent party. There's, again, things here and there that are very exciting. Chris Smalls, by the way, his foray into this, his Instagram post, 2 Instagram posts about a labor party were very vague. I immediately sent my name in, didn't hear anything back.
So, okay, I just signed. I checked out. There's a link too.
So what
very
happened?
small. All right, I put my name in, and that was all I've seen. That's it.
I mean,
and I'm not saying that in a mean way, because I welcome Chris Small even talking about it. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have respect for Chris Small, despite all the internal stuff that happened with ALA and now Teamsters, ALA Teamsters. ALU, I'm sorry. But that's Chris Small talking about a labor party. But by the way, what he meant, if you read the fine print, is he's talking about the CP kind of labor party front that wasn't really that real in the 1940s. But that's okay.
I was wondering. I thought he meant the 1990s Labor Party. I'm like, wait,
he
what?
Was, he was
wasn't there a weird LaRouche, like a LaRoucheite connection to the U.S. Labor
Party for Labor or something?
Okay.
It was
that?
some
Who did that? Chris Small?
Lyndon LaRouche.
No, I know, but did Chris Smalls reference that? I don't think so.
No, he was referencing the 1940s party.
Well, that's what I was worried he was. He's like, I'm going to bring this back.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's a load. I know a lot of places have used that term.
So I think
I know.
So I think in general, it's one thing for, this is what was the statement I wanted to say here was like, it's one thing because for decades now, microsect socialist parties have been calling for an independent, labor-oriented party that participates in these bourgeois elections, which we have to understand have their limitations, but they're also important because that's still where workers organize, and that's where you learn to organize, is when you're knocking on doors, when you're making phone calls, when you're checking off boxes, you're talking to people on the street, it's face-to-face contact, and like that's how you mobilize. You can't do it through Twitter. You can't do it online. You can't do it through a podcast. It has to be in person. And I think that's one of the biggest aspects in organizing within the limitations of bourgeois elections, is learning how to do that, because those skills come in handy down the road when it comes time to organize on a mass level, on a mass scale. That's something that I think a lot of socialist parties tend to miss when they're strictly very much like, no, we have to be an independent revolutionary party. We have to be like the Bolshevik party. It's like, well, we're not there yet. You gotta find where all the radicals are and get them organized and educated and especially educated in the correct theory. That's one thing that's like, man, I wish I could sit down with Chris Smalls and just hammer out like a theory with him, because his heart is there, and I really think he could be a revolutionary, but I don't think he's interested in actually learning what it takes. Like, and that means like sitting down. I know it's boring and it's tedious, but you have to learn the theory and you have to learn the history, because it's like, you wouldn't trust a brain surgeon who hasn't read the textbook, right? Like there is a science to this, right? It's not just Vibes. Like Vibes is only going to get us so far. Vibes was filling with Bernie. He was filling stadiums running on Medicare for all, and nobody else can seem to crack that code, because nobody else is running on it. There was something he resonated with working class people, including Trump voters, by the way. A lot of people who supported Trump because he was anti-establishment. Well, at least they saw him as anti-establishment. He's just this bumbling idiot with an instinct for demagoguery.
I hate to be the old guy in the room, but there was someone else that filled stadiums at one point, believe it or not. Ralph Nader.
Oh, 2000. Yeah.
2000.
I
thought
Madison Square Garden. And,
I thought you were going to say Howard Dean.
Actually filled stadiums. Michael Moore, all the people that now support the Democrats were there. And
yep.
It was amazing. It was an amazing moment.
That was
And
that was the
with
original
very few
blame the left.
resources.
That was the original blame the left for Hitler winning. And I'm old enough to remember George W. Bush as Hitler memes. So one thing I will say though, it's one thing for us to say we need a mass labor party. It is another thing for union officials to actually start making that call, and that's something that's very refreshing and potentially like a new player on the scene. We just had an election here in Ontario. All of our unions lined up behind either the Conservatives or the NDP, our ostensibly Labour Party, when they're really just orange liberals at this point. Very disappointing turnout. Our Conservative guy, all of his legislative accomplishments revolve around booze in some way.
All right, so we got one thing right.
He's the brother.
So what's some of the negatives?
He's the brother of our famous crackhead mayor.
Tom Ford or Rich? Was this Ford?
Rob Ford.
Rob Ford. The fact as an American, I can name a Canadian politician. It means you really stand out.
Mayor. Yeah,
We're Americans.
I had a friend.
I don't know.
I had a
trying
friend
to find you guys tucked all the way down there. I can't find it on a map.
I had a friend in Holland message me. She's like, "What's up with your mayor?" But yeah, he just won his third election in a row. Because there like 57% of people in Ontario just didn't show up to vote. Because there's nobody to vote for. The leader of the Labour Party in Ontario didn't even win her own riding. Like it's embarrassing. This like our politics are a joke, and the unions are just lining up behind these fucking assholes, and it's exhausting. And so to see an actual push south of the border here, it's not enough, obviously, but maybe as Marxists within the because like I think we're all in unions here on this call. Like,
yeah, I am.
We can certainly do something. We can like I take every opportunity I can at my workplace to organize my coworkers, and they actually come to me with questions now, and they're like, well, what do we do now? And someone was asking, it's like, we don't meet enough with our labor rep, with our union rep within the union, the guy who works full time for the union. We don't meet enough with him, and I'm like, why don't we just meet ourselves? And he's like, that's actually not a bad idea. Why don't we just get together and start talking about what's wrong with the union and go from there? Like when you ask simple questions like that, it's like, well, why don't we do it ourselves? That can get a lot of gears turning. And when you have all these different like roots and seeds, they're all saying, hey, we need an alternative. And I think we're all just waiting for somebody else. We're waiting for like an independent Bernie essentially to rise up, because Bernie was a rock star, but at the end of the day, he bent the knee. I'll admit, even north of the border, I did phone banking and text banking for Bernie. I got to talk to American voters. That was an experience.
Yeah, talking.
Very confused politics down there.
I would say even this, like even in 2016, it was strange for me because being a socialist throughout these years was a weird, strange, hokey thing. Kind of. I wasn't around for the Red Scare but like that wasn't. It was kind of a different thing. But when people were like, I have some people who went to, they have a lot of college debt. And they're like, hey, this Bernie, crazy. Have you heard this Bernie Sanders guy talking about eliminating college debt or making free college tuition? People would ask me about single payer healthcare. They'd come to me about it. And I'm like, wow, it is, in a sense, it was exciting initially to be like, people are really talking about, we're not talking about the debt ceiling. We're not talking about, something about bombing some country. It was like, hey, you've been talking about this for years, man. What do you think? And it was nice. Don't get me wrong. But, the problem is that, and what Aaron, you said was right. In 2016, it was pretty clear to everybody watching that the Democratic Party had rigged it. The media had rigged it. The leadership of the DNC and the powers to be in the Democratic Party had shut Bernie out. And he had a question at that time. Do I, A, listen to what the nurses union said and a lot of other organized labor groups said, run as an independent, form, he could take Our Revolution, an independent grassroots organization. He could take that and make a party out of it. He had all the infrastructure, the people, the money, the forces, all there. Option A. Or option B, I kiss the ring and I say, everybody go, Hillary Clinton is the candidate. Everyone go rally around her after they fucked us all over. He chose option B. If he didn't do it by 2016, he's never going to do it. And Jeff said 40 years. That was his time. He had his time in 2016. He runs again in 2020. It wasn't as much enthusiasm. You could tell, first as a tragedy, then as a farce, I think some guy said. But clearly this wasn't going to happen in 2020, and it did the same fucking thing again. He dropped out. Joe Biden's my friend. I'm not going to attack Joe Biden. That's what happened. He blew the opportunity, and I get it. People are desperate. people are desperate. And I know Bernie speaks to a lot of it. And I still get that. My wife's a big Bernie Sanders fan still, and then still thinking, it's like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football, this time I'm not going to pull it from you. But like, you have to, and Jeff says, right, you have to get beyond it. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. This is not the person to listen to. You can listen to him. He's just not going to be that guy that you're looking for. But I thought this was a good point about 40. Yeah. And at the ending of Jeff's article, of course, in 40 years, it's never been the right time for Sanders to break with a corporate Democratic Party. You're right. He did. He had his chance, and the chance is over.
Yeah, and
now
now
we're trained. Sorry, go ahead.
And now, now that the Democrats have lost, Bernie is back on the train, calling against a crusade against the oligarchs taking over the government. Now it's a problem. And honestly, at this point, it's just like, yeah, we've heard this before. Like, we're done with this. I'm so tired of hearing this.
Well, one thing I want to just throw out here is, so we're taught, and again, I'm not saying this from a position of, superiority of any sort, but we're taught to focus on individual candidates. And that really is an important thing to think about, because we're taught parties don't matter. And I'm talking about people on the left are very much into, a lot of people on the left, not everyone. If we just get the right individual in the right, at the right situation, and as a Democratic Party candidate, then we're all set. That's still, it's a legacy of Stalinism and the Popular Front. It's a legacy of other. That's Left Opposition Podcast. I love your title of the show, by the way.
We thought it was pretty cool too.
We still have the residual, consequences of ignoring party and focusing on individual. And that's a huge, huge problem. And part of that is a lesson from, once you do a deep dive on Sanders, you find out that even before he made that deal formally with the DNC, he was able to stop challenges, except for one time when he ran for governor, to his basically power of different sorts in Vermont, because he worked hard at, I'm an independent, I'm an individual, but really supporting the Democratic Party, even playing around with the Republicans when he was first mayor of Burlington. There's a hidden history of he plays dirty power politics as an individual, and the party, where the party matters is that once he got close to the Democratic Party, and certainly after that agreement with the DNC, anyone that challenged him was marginalized. So what does it mean to be in the Democratic Party and have their stamp of approval? And that, Chris, you mentioned Sanders got screwed over by the Democrats. I'd push back a little bit on that, because he was already had committee assignments. He'd already caucused with them. He already was a consummate fundraiser for the Democrats before 2016. He used to come to Cambridge and hang out with Abby Rockefeller and raise the big bucks with her. So he was a star in the Democratic Party. He was not a marginalized, ostracized figure. But when it came to the ultimate power of who's going to run for president, yeah, they slapped him around a little bit, and he took it, and he was fine with it at the end of the day. And he now, Stockholm Syndrome Sanders, man, he goes for that. He now threatens other people with that routinely. And sometimes it's like that Nichols interview in the Nation, which is the consummate liberal rag, by the way. Is everybody? Hopefully you might be aware of that. But
I've heard that magazine a little bit here and there. I think
perfect. It's perfectly timed for that audience. Perfectly. What's the word I'm looking for? It's just like he's really playing to the audience with that interview, where he has that little bit of an edge, so the liberals will think, oh, it's he could do something, but it's really just the same old thing, like you mentioned, for 40 years of I'm an independent. Actually, he did register as a Democrat in the election runs to be in the primaries, but he became officially a part of the Democratic Party and then changed the label. But he's really been tight with the party. What I started to say was, there was actually a black left woman up in Vermont who ran against him, and she publicized, and I have her name in my notes somewhere. She publicized what happened to her when she ran against him after he did his deal with the DNC, and basically no interviews from the corporate media. It was like a wall of silence against her. No fundraising from what passes as fundraising in Vermont from real estate interests, farm interests, you name it. Little bit, University of Vermont type, the liberal bourgeois academics. All that was closed in an organized fashion to her, right? So then she makes the rounds of the progressives, and they go down and dirty, and they trash her. And how many black activists are there up in Vermont? Answer, not that many. You'd think the Democratic Party would welcome her efforts. Instead, they went after her. Cutthroat, no. And she learned from that. She's like, okay, you're going to do this to me. What are you doing to everybody else? I worked hard. I, supported the Democratic Party, blah, blah, and you cut me off. And there is, speaking of podcasts and so on, you got Savvy Sabs, you got Nina Turner, although that's a bit problematic. You have Brianna Joy Gray. They're all like, we're done with Sanders, and they worked for that guy. All right.
Yes, they
So
did. Yep.
you want to check out some insider information every once in a while. Savvy Sabs, I've been listening to her for a while. I was like, and all of a sudden, she just came into her own right now. It's beautiful. And she's going after the Democratic Party and Sanders in a very good way, very constructive way.
That's refreshing to hear. That's really refreshing to hear. I always found Sabs to be very liberal, not super left.
Me too.
I just was not interested. So that's good. That's good to hear. Maybe I'll check it out. Yeah, you know what? This really did change a lot of. I think it's a wake up call with as Trump's second term is no, you can't run on this garbage anymore. People just aren't going to vote for you by default anymore. And
the Democrats won't save us. That's actually a term now.
Yeah.
Trademark.
So what do you do? And then the other unfortunate problem is a lot of people do turn towards individual action. It's this one party that says they're on our side isn't doing anything, so now I have to stock up on canned goods and fantasize about building a commune and go live in the woods and just do all this petty bourgeois individualist action. And we even see it manifests itself in in terrorism, with Luigi Mangione. God protect him. we love Luigi.
I mean,
free Luigi. We love Luigi on here, but
self-defense, as far as I'm concerned. Lord,
but you know what I mean. There's this very much a lack of a collective consciousness in the American psyche, and so it's a kind of a big question, but how do we break through that?
Well, my shorthand with a lot of people, even people that aren't that political, I'll say, there's a price we're paying in this country for not having a workers' party. And I'll explain what a workers' party, and we have a very broad definition of that: Labor Party, Socialist Party, Communist Party, Workers' Party. You can look at some of the formations in Europe that have come and gone. Really broad definition of workers' party, just not taking money from the bourgeois, not taking money from the corporations, and a good program, and et cetera. You pretty much have a workers' party. And it's not that simple as far as whether it's staying power and what it really does, and whether or not it gets co-opted. So we're basically we pay a price in this country for not having a workers' party. The rotten social benefits, the two-party duopoly, the lack of what you were talking about, Aaron, the lack of consciousness. That's how I processed it. Lack of class consciousness. That is tough. That is really hard. Level of alienation being in the belly of the beast. I had a discussion with a brilliant activist today in ISG. I mean, she is just wonderful. And she's like, none of my friends are political. What do I do? It's kind of getting hard, how do I get a balance was the gist of it, and I'm like, well, it's really hard because the alienation stemming from the system here is just so, even if people aren't aware of it, even if they don't agree with you that it's got anything to do with the system. I mean, how many of you have run into the right wingers saying it's not capitalism, it's you're a failure? That's like a
I got my bootstrap factory I'm working on, man. I can't help doing it, right? You're the reason why it's so bad.
I was answering, you know me? Yes, there's
failure.
I
know.
But guess what? I care about other people. Is everybody a failure? Is my family a failure? Are my kids a failure? Is my union a failure? My coworkers a failure? Everybody's a failure except you. Yeah. So
just stop being poor. I know.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part of it is a lot of it is well, maybe you should have invested more. I had a union official at a thing who was because the starting pay for a letter carrier nationally, it's $19.33 an hour, which is a joke.
Invest more.
And what he was saying is people are broke because he goes, because they gamble, because they buy frivolous things. And he was going down these lists of all the, and I remember in the meeting, you wait for someone to look in the meeting, is this fucking guy be serious about it? And someone goes, I'm broke and I work 60 hours a week and I don't do, and he's like, I don't gamble. I don't go do this. I don't do that. I'm sorry I buy grocery. And then we all kind of, it was a turning moment of him and he was trying to backpedal it. But it's union officials, or some of them are saying that. Nice guy. Like, I mean, I liked him otherwise. I did talk to him after, but that's like, we have union officials blaming us. Like, you probably you started with like, there was a $7 an hour pay cut in like 2013. Like, there's a wide gap of what we used to make.
Yeah, it's our spending habits that get blamed, and then the Wall Street Journal releases articles like, why aren't millennials buying diamond rings anymore? Remember those? Remember those articles? Yeah. There's tons of those. It's like we're killing
goes,
these.
I work at a grocery store
Yeah,
for
that was
$13 an hour.
And that was like 10 years ago. That made the rounds.
The thing about where class consciousness comes from and develops, that's a tough one, but I think it's happening because of what we're just talking about. What happens when an entire generation really can't afford to buy a house? What happens when an entire generation is in debt their whole lives for a student debt?
I have
etc.
One of my best friends is a nurse, and she sees the cuts to nursing. She sees the debt that people go into. She follows a lot of politics in the States about the medical debt that people go into. She works with babies that are born in homeless encampments, right? That's her job. That's what she takes care of, and she sees the system every day. And eventually, I don't know what broke, but she just comes to me. She's like, Aaron, like we have to overthrow this system. We have to have this revolution now. Like this is insane. Like, and imagine somebody just flipping like that. It's only just from me, as soon as somebody mentions something wrong with society and I go on this 15-minute diatribe about capitalism, some people, you never know who's listening. And and some people might actually absorb that. And then they come to you later, like, how do I learn? I want to learn more about this.
Yeah, that's a hard thing for people that are having trouble with committing to politics, or it's so hard. I try to say, and this is hard to prove, people are watching us. They're watching what we do. I don't mean that in a bad way, like,
they're watching us.
I mean the feds, but yes,
and Musk and all that. I mean, people, our coworkers, people in our family. I mean, I've got the contradictions a lot of people probably have that are involved with the left. Family members that have supported Trump, that are very working class and actually not doing that well. And they supported Trump, some of them, not all by any means. And what do you do about that? And I'm like, and then all of a sudden they'll read an article I've written, or they'll see something on Facebook and they're agreeing. And I'm like, why the hell are you agreeing suddenly?
Yeah, I know.
Like, oh, yeah, that's why. It's that Marxist stuff,
So
it's
you guys are talking about higher wages.
Just,
well, all right, I'm kind of for that. Yeah.
Class consciousness is just as contradictory as what we're talking about with electoral politics,
Yeah.
Trotsky was all into, hey, an election is a snapshot. Well, you could say that about the class struggle, right? At one moment, someone could have a horrible idea in their heads from actually millions of dollars and billions of dollars being pumped out in corporate propaganda and so on. And it's not a surprise they're going to have that in their heads. But, I like during the BLM movement, which I noticed recently, people aren't even mentioning Black Lives Matter when they talk about it. What's going on with that? Anyway, even during BLM, I saw amazing changes in consciousness overnight. Very scattered and very kind of, the politics weren't all there. The leadership was absent or horrible, buried in the Democratic Party, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But still, that moment of a mass movement, that's one of the more recent ones for me, that, anti-war stuff going back a while. And yes, it can dissipate quickly, but there is that moment too, where people are struggling. They're broken out of their routine. They're thinking of ideas. And, we had just started as an organization when BLM, after George Floyd was murdered and the big protests, and we just grew overnight, doubled our small numbers, but whatever, doubled, and had a lot of interest. And then it kind of, started to go down a little bit. Recently, it's coming back a little bit, and so I don't know. Yeah, it's there's a lot of contradictions with class consciousness in the U.S., obviously. Again, overused metaphor, but very apt, the belly of the beast here and all that. I'm not surprised by anything. I'm not surprised when Trump yells at Zelensky on TV. Yeah. I'm like, what, they're like, we never saw this before. I'm like, don't you remember Reagan? And, don't you remember like some really crazy shit? Barry Goldwater when I was a child, I mean, there's some insane, never underestimate how insane American politics can get. Just don't do that. But also don't underestimate the working class, and of course, most of the left does.
100%. So, in ways to not fight back, and what's not at all helpful, today is the economic boycott day.
Oh God! So I bought a coffee this morning.
I did my best.
You're not supposed to shop at Disney, Walmart, Amazon, anything like that.
Are the people rioting?
Too fucking bad. too fucking bad. I'm broke as all hell. I'm buying groceries where I need to. Like
I did buy groceries.
I don't
too,
care. I don't care about this stupid boycott. It doesn't do fuck all.
I know.
You know,
and I didn't want to be mean to
it's
people. I didn't want to be mean to my liberal friends.
I lost my patience.
dude.
I lost my patience. People,
Me too, Chris. I picked my battles, and I did not
People-
go out. I didn't go to the barricades on this one.
people brought it up.
I know.
There's a
I
massive.
didn't say I'm like I think a general strike would be more effective, but sure, I'll not buy anything today. And
There's
other
a-
than my coffee, mea culpa.
I mean, for the past month to fight back against the Trump tariffs on Canada, there's been massive, there's this nationalist sentiment that's been whipped up, and I think that played a huge part in the Conservatives winning in Ontario. You know, we have to only buy Canadian, and it's like, okay, so we're going to make Canadian billionaires even richer. You know, the same people that screwed us over during COVID, cut our hours, laid us all off, even though they all got bailed out by the government, or you know, forced us to go back to work when the profits ran out. No, this is bullshit, and I'm not fucking participating in this anymore. This is our chance to educate the working class that your power does not come from being a consumer. It comes from production. It comes from the other end. Your ability to withhold your labor is the most powerful tool you have, right? Not
Robert
from
Reich. Robert, I saw your comment to Robert Reich, Aaron. I saw you. Everyone, now. Robert Reich, however, was participating in a 24-hour no.
That's what I'm
post
talking
thing.
about. Yes, it's this.
And I did see Aaron slap Robert Reich on the internet, on Facebook, folks. Go look at Aaron. He's right there.
I just wrote.
And they called him slacktivism.
Slacktivism.
You could say, right?
This
Slacktivism. Is that the term?
This does nothing. You made up.
Right.
It's like that general strike that somebody tried to implement a few years ago.
Oh, the global worldwide general strike.
You just made a Facebook page called General Strike and set a date for it, and then hope people follow. And guess what? Nothing happened because you didn't actually organize anything. You know,
But
it
I
takes
the post, Aaron.
It takes
what,
a lot.
What do you want from me? I did a heart react. I never do heart reacts. All right.
It takes a lot to organize and a lot of discipline, especially to organize people.
The event too. I shared it
on the production side, right? Because that's where their profits come from. Is through our labor power, right? Is through the extraction of surplus labor, and that's something people don't understand. It's just this bizarre consumer culture. It's like, well, you know, we have to boycott Starbucks and McDonald's because they support Israel. It's like, okay, well, how what did that do? Nothing.
Right.
I'm tired. I'm tired of hearing about these boycotts. And like, when are people going to wake up? This doesn't fucking do anything.
Right. And
Well, I
that's
agree.
the-
Sorry, go ahead.
Jeff.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
All right, I would say this, like, okay, here's the thing for our liberal friends and anyone else. Boycotts are secondary action, right? That's it. If say the McDonald's workers went on strike for recognition of a union, and the workers said, "Don't go to McDonald's. We don't go to McDonald's because we're on strike." And this is going to help. That is absolutely a great tactic.
That is the correct move, 100%.
That's the correct move.
Because
there's a picket line. You don't cross that fucking picket line.
Because it's being driven by the workers, and the workers are withholding their labor. Because if you actually want to hit these corporations hard, you withhold your labor and you listen to the striking workers. Go ahead.
It's not an accident that and a lot of liberals love this. The Taft-Hartley Act, the heart of the NLRB legislation, solidarity strikes, what they call sympathy strikes, are illegal, and secondary boycotts are illegal. Boycotts can work very well. Alabama bus boycott, for example, obviously, if they're targeted and if you have organization behind them. But this thing that happened today, actually the corporate media picked it up. I was hearing a lot of corporate media stuff about this. It was kind of interesting that from that angle. But of course, yeah, there's no organization there, so there's no boycott happening in any real sense. But when people talk about the general strike stuff that was I think you mentioned, Aaron, this date, general strike, that one I'll discuss with people. Because that's different, like, wait a minute, here's what general strikes are. Here's what they look like in other countries. We don't have them here anymore. We had them in 1946 in Oakland, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's a good discussion to have. But the end of it is very disappointing. Like, a fair amount of young people, very young people are in ISG. And I don't want to mutual aid came up earlier. I got to pick my battles on mutual aid because high school kids and stuff, they're into that stuff. And there's a good impulse there. It's empathy. It's like, get organized, but it's flawed, obviously from a standpoint of a real power organization. And often comes from a place of, well, you can give people stuff. I can't. I don't have enough to give away on any scale that will help anybody, you know. But the general strike thing, I think that's worth some discussion about, you know. But
I mean, if it's seriously, if it's coming from labor leaders, then yes, I would absolutely entertain a general strike. Greece shows us how a general strike is done today. Same day as the economic boycott. Greece, millions of people are in the streets right now.
Yeah.
For a general strike. That's how you do it.
Well, the Teamsters here, back when the UPS, when you almost went on strike, well, Chris, you worked for the Postal Service, but you know, when you came to our meetings,
I came to your meeting, Jeff. I was there. Yep. Yeah, I'm a former, and I'm a 5-year former employee of UPS as well.
So there was almost a UPS strike. The Teamsters in Rhode Island, actually, I mentioned Rhode Island earlier. The Teamster organizer was like, "Well, we're done with NRB." We're like, "Yay." We're gonna strike for recognition. We're like, excellent. They didn't do it. But it wasn't forgotten. And we actually know of have to qualify this a little bit, a new Teamster organizing project in Worcester. And I can't really say where yet, but they're going to do a strike for recognition. We're very excited about that. We're going to support it, obviously. And that's just
an old way of doing it. Yeah.
We have people involved in who they're trying to organize. We have members. So we're very excited about that. That's real, not a general strike, but that's real. But I mean, I've been on strike, and one thing people don't understand is, and I'm not talking down to anyone here. I'm just saying, most people aren't in unions, right? So, but I think they can relate to this. It's scary, you know. You can lose your job. When I went on strike, we're in the middle of nowhere in the foothills of Albany, New York, at an industrial area, and the cops just miraculously showed up at midnight and started pushing us around and shit. Why? You know, because we walked off the floor of the factory I was working in, and there was nobody around, but we set up a picket line like we're supposed to, so the trucks could come in. And there's like all these cops there. Who called them, and why'd they show up like that? When you get mugged or when your house gets broken into, they take their time. And I know from personal experience living in certain places, my apartment gets robbed twice, 2 different apartments. Cops took their time, and they showed up, and they just joked about it. So, but you try to go on strike, the cops show up very serious, and that's scary. So losing your job now with the low living standards for a lot of workers, low wages and so on, you know what the cops are capable of. It's a scary thing. Strikes are scary. But if you do them right, and that's a big if, you know, then they're less scary, and they're actually turn into something different. They turn into like, wow, I didn't know we could do that. I didn't know people would do that. I mean, the strike I was on, there was this person I had my eye on in a negative way, because she always sat with the managers, sat with the supervisors at lunch. And I'm over there eating my roast beef sandwich, like grumbling to myself, because she's always joking around with the supervisors, right? She comes out to the picket line and just changed completely. And actually, she was injured during a strike. A cop car ran over her foot, broke her foot. We're like carrying her. You know, I mean,
was a cop arrested by chance? Did they go after the police? They broke the law, right? I'm sure they arrested the police officer. They arrest their own, right?
Police.
We're all equal under the law, Jeff. No one's above the law. Come on.
The police remained unscathed after our strike, but we did win the strike. This is back a long time ago.
Oh, cool. All right, good.
Strikes
all right, happy ending.
We won a lot, actually. But the point is that people can change like that based on events. Whether it's not, it sticks is where organization comes in. I'm kind of trying to bring that back to the original point about class consciousness. A bit of a stretch, but I've seen it happen. During BLM, I've seen it happen when I was on strike. A lot of other times, but not all the time. Not all the time. And right now we're in this moment. I'm not sure which way that's going to cut. You know, but lesser evilism, I don't think is dead and gone at all. But among a crucial, let's say, layer of activists that sound a little pretentious, I think that there's some profound questions happening in some room there to say, hey, you've been in DSA for 3 years, but it didn't work, did it? So let's try something else. You know, I don't know. That's just one example.
All right.
I think that's a good spot to end off of. That was a fantastic point.
I was just going to say that is a good spot to end off on for this article. So cool.
Jeffrey Booth, Independent Socialist Group. The article is Getting Past Sanders and Towards a Workers' Party. We'll put it in the show notes. Thanks for dropping by. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Can I stick around and listen? Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, if you want. We are going to talk about Russia, Ukraine. Do you follow the Ukraine-Russia war? Have you heard of this country before, by chance? You have? Well, then you are welcome to stick around.
I just talked a lot. I will sit back and just